Well, guys, welcome back to the Stalking Shadows podcast. And as you can see, I am in a different spot right now. I'm sitting in my living room as I am home alone and I don't have to go sit outside in the cold cabin doing this podcast session. So, if I show you guys what it looks like right now, it's it would look like a fire hazard. It's like a wiring program or wiring system in one of our illegal wiring connections when you go through the cities where you see all these cables just dragged everywhere. That's kind of what it looks like when I'm sitting around. And so let's hope I get through this podcast without short circuiting myself. So let's dive into it.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to work, cause my boss is a jerk, and I'm not even that paid. I need a change in my life, cause I don't feel alive, and there's nothing that makes me happy. Hold my beer for a minute, I'm about to quit my job, cash in for a ticket. I'm going on a trip, and I don't plan to visit. I'm gonna stay there till I feel like I'm winning.
Those of you who don't know who I am Wayne Dell. I am the owner and outfitter of African Brother Safaris, and I am your host here on the Stalking Shadows podcast. Today we are going to just chat about Zwei, my tracker. For those who have followed his journey through throughout, it's actually a year to the day when I put up his first post about trying to get together a back a buddy campaign for him for donations to get him a prosthetic leg. It's exactly a year to the day. I won't forget it. I sat with my wife and the night before, and I said, I got to do something about Zwei. So for those who are tuning in now, Zwei lost his leg a few years ago, a good few years ago. Let's call it, man. I want to say about, why have I hit a blank? 10, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. My maths isn't that good. 2013. So 13 years ago. That makes sense. Yeah. So he unfortunately got an infection in his leg, and due to our poor state care, he lost his leg. And if you guys all want to find out how it happened, what happened, I strongly suggest go back in the YouTube, or if you are listening to this on our podcast channel, make sure you go back and listen to the stories from the beginning. It's a hell of a journey that we've been on so far. And as I say, it's a year to the day, and it's super exciting for me to share this part of the story. But there is a part of it that I've got to share and point out how difficult things are here in South Africa when it comes to government standards and government facilities. And when people need help, they kind of get looked over and aren't taken seriously, or they're either people in a position which shouldn't be in a position. So let's wind the clock back a little bit. Zwei, obviously, we got a donated knee from a awesome guy, Steve, who is part of X22 Adventures, who helps veterans out in America. And he donated the knee that Zwei is using at the moment. But for those who don't know, there's a lot more that is in getting a prosthetic fitted to people. I myself didn't know the amount of steps and phases we would have to go through in getting Zwei on his own 2 feet. As I thought, well, you get measured up, they make you what I in the beginning called the top part of the leg, which now I know it's called the socket, and you get your silicon sock and you put it on, and Bob's your uncle, and off you go. You learn how to walk. It isn't that simple. So in this whole process, Steve is a right-legged amputee and Zwei is a left-legged amputee. The gentlemen are two different heights. Zwei is quite a bit taller than what Steve was, so the tube part at the bottom below the knee was too short, so we had to get that as well for Zwei. And our doctor Etienne was absolutely amazing in trying to use as much of the donated knee, foot, and everything to build something for Zwei to work, because donations have been great and they have been slow. So, guys, I never thought this would have turned into a full on kind of job for me to go out and ask for money. I'm not the type of person who goes out and asks for money, and I find it very difficult to ask strangers and people to donate to a cause. I myself am a very hesitant person when it comes to donating to things that I don't know, or I haven't met personally people. So I do understand the hesitation in donating to causes like this. But one thing I did find in this whole process, and the whole thing is, I actually found strangers, people who have never met Zwei before, more generous in donating than people who know Zwei, like fellow professional hunters and outfitters and guys like that who know him. They all follow the story. They all bump into him at the local grocery store and go, "Hey, Zwei, awesome, see you on the 2 feet." Those are the type of people that who know him and who know his work ethic and the type of person he is, who's a go-getter, who's never given up. Even though the state facility, the state care failed him, he's never given up. He's always got a smile on his face. He's passionate about what he does, and he's extremely capable, even on a set of crutches, which is unbelievable for the type of work that we do. And the places I've seen that man go with his crutches, most able-bodied people can't get there and won't go there because it's too difficult for them to get back. Because remember, it's always easy going down or going to a spot, but it's the turnaround and hedging, hooking it back, where it'd either be back up a mountain or down a mountain after you're tired, and he still does it, and he's never given up. And that's why I've been so actively busy at trying to get him back to normality. But it's never going to be normal, but he's going to be able to have the use of his hands, which brings in another whole aspect, to living. If you constantly having to walk around on your hands, now all of a sudden you've got 2 legs again that you can walk around and use your hands. It's just a whole new lifestyle again, and that's really what has pushed me to help Zwei is get his life back. So I just want to go into the struggles that we had in this whole process, and this hasn't been smooth sailing like everyone seems to think it is. And the process what we've done in a year is exceptional. It's unbelievable that the amount that we've done in a year. I fully had anticipated maybe 2 years before we got into where we are now. But the people that have come on board and those that have helped, and the support that I've had from my wife Alex to keep pursuing this, in crazy times, the world isn't what it is. Business isn't what it is at the moment. The war has messed everything up regarding our hunting industry. The number of cancellations that we have had this year alone, and I'm sure there are other outfitters and professional hunters that can also agree on that. It's been a crazy year. It's one of those, as they say, it's the year of the horse. I go around and I call it an absolute mare of a year. Chestnut mare. Anyone knows horses? Chestnut mare, tricky, quirky, unpredictable. That's kind of what this year has been for me personally, and having all these other things to work on and work with. Why? Hence the reason I've been so quiet on social media and so so quiet in the podcasting because navigating this year has been extremely tough for everyone. I think, and just with my family in general, it's been extremely tough. But we putting one foot in front of the other. We keeping our heads up. We've had an amazing client, Donny, who really appreciates what we did for him, and we had one cracker of a hunt, hell of a nice guy. Can't wait to have him back on South African soil one day again because we really hit it off and we just had an absolute blast. So let's go back. You'll see those who follow on social media is why I didn't have his leg for Donny's specific hunt. So that's why I had his first cast socket, which was the original temporary socket. It was clear in color. And the reason for that is obviously is because why I had been without a leg for so long. The doctor had to get Zwa on a strict wrapping process to wrap his stump to get it to shrink down to a size that it doesn't shrink anymore, if that makes sense. Because you just remember all the tissue and muscles and everything was just hanging there loose. So it wasn't a limb or a arm or leg that's moving all the time, that you're building muscle and the muscle is staying firm. And Zwei did an exceptional job of sticking with his wrapping and stuff, and we got him into his first socket. We knew after Etienne saw Zwei walk his first steps, he knew that Zwei was going to just take off like a bullet because this guy was hungry for it. And he knew that that socket wasn't going to last long because we tried to keep him in it as long as possible because the more he used his leg and was more active, the better chance for Etienne to get a actual size of his stump, which what happened was it did shrunk. I think he lost more than 5 centimeters all round on his stump wearing that leg for it was a month or two, maybe a bit longer. And he, because he's active, and I think the fear of losing his leg, obviously breakdowns as I call it. I say to him, we've got to become mechanics and look after his stump as best as we can. When there were slight issues, I don't think Zwa was forthcoming quick enough. I realized that when I could hear him walking now, there was a clicking noise. And what had actually happened was because his stump had shrunk so much in diameter, because he's a very high amputee, Etienne got him a sock which has a ratchet pin at the bottom. So when he lines his leg up and he puts it in, the pin goes into a little hole that's got teeth on it, and it, as a ratchet, it clips in. And what I noticed was when I was walking, I could hear the ratchet was trying to click again. So he was sinking down into his socket. But because the design of the socket has what they call the seat. Yes, guys, I've learned lots of new things when it comes to prosthetics. The seat, which is the part, the back of the leg, which the socket which sits on the bum bone, that's what holds the support from the top to stop him from sinking down. I think what actually happened is because he was sinking so much down with it, and he was on his feet active. He's the type of guy when the doctor told him 1 hour today, 2 hour tomorrow, 3 hour the next day. No. He was 1 hour, I don't want to take it off. 2 hours, I don't want to take it off. 3 hours, Wayne sees him and says, take a damn leg off, rest. You don't want to hurt yourself. He's that type of guy. So by this stage, when he had shrunk to that point, he was active. He was wearing his leg the whole day and only taking it off when he stopped to have meals and resting then. And he's a big boy. I can only explain to him as much as I can and try and ask him to do it those ways. But I think with the pressure of him sinking down, that's what cracked and exploded basically the top of his test socket, which luckily enough, we had all the pieces. We sent it to Etienne. Etienne got it set glued back together because he had to use now this old socket to recast to make a new socket. So Etienne had that, and we were working on the farm. And this was in the new year now. So we'd started the beginning of this year. And I had noticed why I had come back after Christmas holiday with quite a nasty cough. And I had said to Alex, I need to take this guy to the doctor to go and get checked out. I'm not going to send him to a clinic, which is government state thing. I'm going to take him to a private doctor, pay for it myself, because I want to get down to the problem of his health. We want to make sure that he stays healthy, keeps healthy, and that makes it easier for doctors to work on his prosthetic. And the fitter and stronger and healthier he is, the better he's going to be walking. So it's super important. And so I've always had a cough since he's come back to me, but he did have TB years ago. So he'd been on the TB treatment that had all been cleared up and given the all clear. That's what he said. And the worry about it is that after his TB stint is when he lost his leg, and then doctors lay in hospital for months. And I think the fear of the state care facility is the fear of when he is actually sick, he's too scared to take himself to a doctor or a clinic to be sorted. It's all this, I'm okay. And the scary part about it is what happened now with him was that Zwei had actually got TB again, and his one lung had actually collapsed while he was here on the farm. And I thought he'd gone and pulled an intercostal muscle because he was walking on his crutches a lot while we waited for the new leg to be finished. And we had been collecting cattle, and he was, you know, boxing the cattle in on his crutches, and he works. He doesn't give up. He doesn't say no. He's not the type of guy to sit back and watch the rest of us. He works, and he had stumbled in the crawl, and I thought, okay, well, and then he collapsed, and I went to him, and he could hardly breathe, and I was like, what's going on? He says, no, there's a sharp stabbing pain, and with that, it was late in the evening already. The next day, we were actually supposed to go and fit his new socket. And I had to phone Etienne and say, listen, change of plans. I'm taking this guy to the doctor. He's not well. He's in terrible pain. You're not going to be able to fit him and get him to walk correctly for you in this time period let's get him checked out. Let me get him back on his feet, and then we'll line up another fitting. So no problem with Etienne. I take him to the private doctor. Private doctor has one look at him, checks him out, taps on the back of his back. One side the lungs fine, the other side it sounds like he's knocking on a drum, it was the weirdest sound ever. He says, listen, yeah. And he said straight to hospital, straight to casualty. And this is where the start of the dramas came in, and where I saw firsthand how terrible state care is, and how there isn't any care. It shouldn't be called state care. It should be called like state death, because that's what we walked into. And I went straight to the casualty with him, as the private doctor gave us a letter to go to casualty. On the letter, it stated that's why I needed chest x-rays, as his lung was full of fluids and basically collapsed. His O2 levels were below 90. He was 88 and 89. And he needs to go have his bloods done and be put on antibiotics. Walked in at state care, and before I left there, the doctor said, you're going to have issues because why didn't come with a ambulance. And I was like, well, your note should be good enough, and off we go. I get there, find the nurse basically on duty there. She takes one look at the document, sends us into one of the casualty bays to put Zwa on a oxygen machine. And I'm no fool, guys. I can read numbers. They put Zwa on the oxygen machine, and that damn thing did not even touch 90. It bounced around between 88 and 89, 88, 89. And the nurse went and wrote on his form 92 and said, cheers, you must go to outpatients. So remember, this guy was in pain from the evening before. We've traveled into town. It takes us an hour to get to town, 45 minutes to an hour to get to town. Been to a private doctor. The private doctor has said this is what he needs done. And you get to the hospital and the nurse blatantly writes 92 on the O2 thing. And I called her out on it because Zwa can barely talk now. He's in such pain. And I stood there and I said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going everywhere he's going because I know they're going to steamroll his ass and not take any consideration for the amount of pain he's in or anything. So I questioned the nurse. The nurse said, well, we'll put him back on the thing. It was 92. I said, it never touched 92. I was watching that machine myself. Put him back on the O2 machine after a bit of arguing, and it touched 90 once. It sat below 90 the whole time when they ran the test. And once it spiked, obviously where he managed to take a decent breath. And they wrote 92, cheers to outpatients. So off we go to outpatients. Guys on crutches, barely can breathe, no wheelchair, no nothing. Go down the stairs, cheers, go down there, go and sort out your file and get in the queue. So this is 8:30 in the morning, guys. And the place is packed. So we get the to the queue that is to the reception lady who's going to go look for your files. So because Zwa hadn't been in the hospital for a very long time, his files were in the archives. So they had to go and find his files, okay? Because the last time he was in hospital was when he lost his leg, when he was so ill that they transferred him to Port Elizabeth, to Livingston, where he lay for 2 months, no one bothering to check up and make sure that he was okay, mediocre freaking care at best, that eventually a doctor came out of Cape Town and said to him, I either take your leg or you die. And that was the only time he said that any doctor took any care or was worried about the fact that he had actually gone so septic because of his leg. So you can understand how this guy's feeling now in a hospital, absolutely panicked to what may happen. But I never left him. I stayed with him the whole time and made sure. There was a lovely lady at reception, a colored lady. I wish I knew her name now. She went and got all his paperwork, sorted it all out. There was a fee that had to be paid. I paid for it. You know, it's state care. You shouldn't have to bloody pay fees. But anyway, I paid the fee and we had to sit in the queue and waiting. So now when you sit in the queue, guys, there's like a nursing station with these makeshift blinds. There are 2 nurses there. They get your file, or you've got your file, you hand it to them. They do screening, so it'll be blood pressure, O2, sugar, and all that thing. So basic screening before you go to the doctor to say that this has been done. At my private healthcare, private doctor, we go in now. That all gets done. Temperature and all that stuff all gets done before you actually see the doctor. So this is what was done. But when we walked to the lady to do the screening, the lady didn't bother to open his file for one. She took a look at him and saw he was on crutches and said, cheers, go to that door over there. So we none the wiser. Off we go. I get to the next door. I find the next lady. The lady looks at him and says, oh no, you need to go sit in that queue over there. So off we go sit in the next queue. So in this whole time, it's no food, no water. We've been bounced around from queue to queue. It's hours and hours later. Eventually they come out with a 5-liter bottle of water. There are about 40 people there in this one section with a couple of plastic mugs. and offered everyone water, help yourselves there. There's not even enough mugs for the people that are there. So people are sharing mugs. These are sick people in hospital. It's absolutely ridiculous. So after sitting there for about an hour and a half, I realized something's not right. Every other person that was around us has either got a cast or in a wheelchair or, on crutches. And I'm going, something, we shouldn't be here. You're not here for this. So I found another nurse. I go to the nurse, I hand her the file. I said, am I sitting in the right place? Those nurses sent me here. That nurse sent me here. This is my guy's file. He needs chest x-rays, he needs blood work, he needs antibiotics, and he needs to be admitted. This is hours later, guys. This is like midday. And we are still sitting in the wrong place. And she said, no, well, there comes the doctor. So I found the doctor. The doctor was very polite. I said to him, listen here, here's my guy's file. I think we are in the wrong place. The nurses have sent us here. He took one look at the file. He says, no, but this is orthotics. What you doing here? You need to be in that queue over there. Did you not go to screening? I said, we went to screening. The lady at screening sent us to this door. The receptionist from here for the doctor sent us to that door. And this is what has happened. So if I wasn't there following up on all these things, Zwai would have sat in that hospital right until he was seen at that specific door and realized he was in the wrong place. By that stage, it would have been too late to see a doctor, and he would have been kicked out the hospital and said, come back tomorrow. But the doctor took us down to the lady at screening, who was very upset at seeing us there because we came back. So we had to wait in the queue again. Zwai gets screened, and then we end up in the correct place now, waiting to see a doctor. Guys, remember, I've already taken him to a private doctor. We've already got what needs to be done. But because it's the hospital, now you have to go to their doctors. I don't know who's better qualified or what. But anyway, we sit in the queue, and now I realize, hey, this is going to be a long day. I'm going to head to the shops. I'm going to go and get Zwai some food, some cool drink. I'm going to get him some stuff for the evening because he's going to be admitted because they're not going to feed him there. Let's get the stuff he needs. So I leave him in the queue and now dart out. When I go out the building, I bump into the receptionist. And she was like, it was her lunch break. She was like, what are you still doing here? I'm like, the nurse didn't screen my guy. He had one look at him and saw he was on crutches and sent us to orthotics. She says, I wondered why you were walking with the doctor from orthotics. I'm like, you tell me. Now that's a nurse, two nurses that didn't do their jobs. So she says, don't worry, she'll fix it up. And I went to town quickly. I came back. By the time I'd come back, she had gone and said, listen, there's a very sick patient. And she gets a lot of flack for doing this and running around chasing those nurses to do their jobs. And she is a receptionist, a lady who deals with all the paperwork and the stuff behind the desk. But she managed to get us to see the doctor instead of sitting for another 4 hours or 5 hours. Once we end up in the doctor's room, the doctor looks at Zwai, and it feels like we are sitting in a damn interrogation room. The guy can barely breathe. He's been in pain for hours, and this guy starts interrogating him to the point where he's blatantly rude. And I think lucky for me and for Zwai is that I understand the language. I speak the language fluently. And I stood there next to Zwai and I said, right, now you're going to hear me out because what are you asking him is kind of out of line because you're basically berating the guy here and he's here for a reason. He is sick. I've already taken him to a private doctor. So I don't know if he was upset or pissed off in a sense that I had taken Zwai to a private doctor. His medical note was in the file from the private doctor. He basically poked and prodded Zwei. That was about it. Asked him a few questions, never did anything else, and then basically said, here's a form, off you go to x-rays. X-rays is 2 stories up. Again, guys on crutches, no assistance. Cheers. Guy can barely breathe. Off we go. We march our way up there. We get there. No one to be seen at x-rays. We look around. Eventually someone appears. We hand them the note. We get the x-rays done. When the doctor gave us this note, he told us, please come directly back to me. Don't go sit in the queue. Come straight back to my door and wait outside. So we do the x-rays. We come all the way back. Now we get outside his door and it's closed. So both of us stand politely in the passageway like naughty school kids. And we thought he's busy with the patient. 10 minutes goes by. Eventually this oak opens his door, he comes out. He's basically closed his door so no one comes there to him with more patients. And he's like, oh, you here? I said, well, we've been standing here for 15 minutes. And this is not on. Come in. He says, okay, we can see that there's fluid on the lungs. We need to admit you. You're going to be admitted this evening, and we're going to draw the fluids. Get you on some antibiotics. Go down 2 doors down to the ladies there. They're going to draw bloods. Make sure that they leave the central line in, because that's how we're going to administer the antibiotics. So I said, okay, cool. Off we go. So now we get to where they draw blood. And this is where the shit gets crazy, guys. There are 3 nurses in there. One that has messed stuff all over her shirt. She is as glass-eyed as anything. Absolutely liquored. But she's at work. I wish, to this day, I still kick myself. I wish I'd pulled my phone out to record this shit. I'm not making it up. This is disgusting. Another old nurse sitting at the desk. I hand her the paper to draw blood. Zwei needs 5 vials of blood drawn for different things. Yeah, they're busy talking to her, talking to Zwei. They put the line in and everything, and he's sitting there, and they start drawing blood. I don't know about you guys. I've had blood drawn before. Normally they put a line in wherever they're going to draw from, and the vials are sealed with a rubber cap on the top. They clip it in, it draws the vial, you pull it off, it stayed sealed. They shake it, they put it down in a little rack, and they draw the next lot of blood. And then on each thing there's a label, they write what it's for. Simple. I've had much. Believe you me, if I tell you this, you actually think I'm talking the biggest load of Java under the sun. Every vial she took, she pulled the top of the test tube off. The purple ones, the yellow ones, it pulls the tops off. Basically drip feeds that blood from that central line into the test tube on Zwei's arm. Has a little brown cardboard box there. When she's got enough blood in each, she puts them in the box. No lids on them. She's not drawing one and putting it on, drawing one and putting it on. She's literally drip feeding, putting it there. No gloves, no cotton buds around. So I starts bleeding all the way down his arm. That she's asking another nurse to give her cotton buds. The other drunk ass nurse is sitting there. She's too drunk to even help or do anything. And the other nurse that she's asking to assist is taking blood from another patient sitting in the same room, also doesn't have gloves on. And while she's doing blood there, stretching here, grabbing a bit of toilet paper and handing it to this nurse to dab up Zwei's blood, who she doesn't have any gloves on. It's wild, guys. So again, if you want to ever end up in a state care facility while you're out in Africa, make sure you don't pay your insurances or pay for solid medical insurance, because that's the type of treatment you're going to get. Make sure that you have got something to cover you when you're out here, because shit does happen and you may need to go to a private medical care facility. They will not accept you unless your insurance is up to date and sorted, or they're going to want the cash up front. That's how the private care sector works. So with this, Zwai's blood is in this little cardboard box. And now she's capping all the lids on top and writing the names. The drunk nurse is too worried about talking to me and quite amazed that I can speak their language fluently, that she is just more concerned with me and not sorting herself out. And the old nurse goes, "Oh, there's supposed to be 5 vials in here." I said, "But you did do 5." When she looked in the box, the one vial is fallen over and poured out everywhere in this little box. So she has to draw blood again. She put a little lid on the central line that was left in. So my brain goes, unscrew the damn thing and take blood from there again. No, she shoves another needle in his hand to draw the last vial of blood. So we spent freaking hours there trying to draw 5 vials of blood. And in this time that we were getting blood drawn, there was another lady who was sent back to have more bloods taken because the ladies who were testing the blood or running the tests couldn't use the blood that had been drawn previously because of this poor process that they were doing. So this is the struggle, one of the struggles in this day that we had. So with that, they send us to the waiting area because now Zwei needs to be admitted. So we're sitting there and we're waiting. One lady, two gentlemen, three gentlemen, all waiting to be admitted. And while we're sitting there, the phone call comes, they come and fetch the lady. The lady goes up. Now the 3 gentlemen are there. So you must remember, we've been there from 8:30 in the morning, and this is now 4:30, 4:45. These nurses and stuff want to leave at 4:30. You can see it. So now they've shut everything down, no more patients. They're sending everyone out. The place that was humming like a beehive was dead quiet. No more patients. But we were sitting in this waiting room to get the phone call to come up to be admitted. So now what happens is a nurse comes along and starts talking to the guys that are left there. And again, I'm standing on the door side. She doesn't realize that I understand what she's saying. And she starts in saying to the guys sitting here, they are the reason why they can't get a bed in the hospital. And I looked at her and I said, "Excuse me, you are blaming patients that are ill, that are needing to be admitted for not being admitted because they are the reason. What is this reason?" So she turns around and proceeds to say that the community is the reason why these guys aren't getting admitted, because the community says they may not release any patients that are ready to be released unless there's a family member to collect or take them. So they cannot discharge themselves, and they won't be discharged unless there's a family member there. So now there are not enough beds for the guys to go into the ward because members haven't come and fetched their healthy family members while you've got sick people here trying to get into the hospital. So basically, pack your shit and go home. And I looked at her and I said, "Sorry, honey, we ain't going nowhere. I've been here since 8:30 with my guy. He's being admitted today. And I'm not driving an hour home and an hour back tomorrow, and this guy may die in his bed at home. This is not happening. He should have been admitted at 8 o'clock this morning. But we've had to jump through all these bloody hula hoops here to get Zwei in." And eventually she stripped herself with me, and I was like, "No, I'm not going anywhere." And I don't know, it's a guy, he's a bit like a porter, type. He he comes down, collects the patients, and takes them up to the rooms when they get the phone call. And he came down and he collected us and said, "Come, we're going to go sit outside the ward." So we were told there were no beds available. When we got outside the ward, there were plenty beds available, but they didn't want to make the beds up for the patients. So state care is not where you want to be. And this is the sad part. If you've got a whole string of people that are supposed to be doing their jobs who are too lazy or too incompetent to do their jobs. And the poor patient suffers. And this is and I stood there with that nurse, the previous, and I said, this is actually disappointing and disheartening to see that you as a nurse are telling these patients that they are the reason why they're not getting a bed tonight. They came to the hospital for help. They didn't come there to mess about. The ones that are treated and are better, that should leave, should be discharged and put in a waiting room so these guys can be admitted. That's how my brain works, trying to save people's lives. But not for them. Cheers, you go home and die, and these can just sit here and carry on waiting until someone feels like collecting them. So this was this absolutely shit show of a day that I had to deal with, trying to get Zwei to see a doctor to get better. So, guys, I head on home the next morning because remember, the doctor said he would treat him that night when he was in the ward and put a drain in and everything. I promise you, the next morning when I phoned Zwei, the dude could barely speak on the telephone. No doctor had seen him, no pain medication, and he'd been lying in that hospital bed, and he proceeded to lie in that hospital bed until that following evening before they came and put a drain in and gave him medication. So you can understand why the guy's hesitant about getting or going to state hospital or clinics or doctors. But unfortunately, if you can't afford private care, you're going to have to go to these places. And unfortunately, you will end up with terrible nurses that are either overstretched, too tired to do their jobs, aren't there for the right reasons for paycheck, drunk, sitting there at work. You know, that shouldn't happen in a state care facility. It shouldn't happen in any facility. If you are a medical profession, you should be there for your patients first. But anyway, so I got checked out, everything sorted, got medicine into him. Luckily for me, I have a brother-in-law who is a doctor, who runs a hospital in Canada. And when Zwei came out of the hospital, I got all his medication, gave him a call and said, right, what am I looking at here? How do I go about this? How do we make sure that he takes his doses correctly? And we got him on a program that helps Zwei with his medication. But the crazy part is now when Zwei was at home and he went for his checkups, what did they go do? They pulled his stitches out too soon, which created even a more prolonged period for Zwei getting better, because now instead of it knitting properly, it took longer to knit. So his cough had got a lot better with the medication he was on. His lungs had been drained. But unfortunately, Zwei had gone and lost a lot of weight. So we had to get him healthy again, get some food in him, get him walking around slowly, getting his fitness levels back up. So when it came to fitting this next test socket with Etienne, he would be strong enough. When Etienne arrived, it was about 2-3 weeks, and nearly was a month in total between his broken socket to the point where we fitted him with his neck socket. And Etienne was like, "Oh, he has lost weight." The socket went on a bit tight, a bit looser than it should have been. It should have been actually a little bit tighter. But anyway, got Zwei set up in all of that. And Zwei had some awesome adjustments. Oh, this was a quick fit because it was a Etienne in and us out, and he didn't really get him to see him walking with it properly. But it got Zwei back on track again, and we did a hunt. So Aina got to do a hunt with a lovely group of clients from the UK. We hunted for another buddy of mine, and it was just nice getting out in the bush. And Zwei was back on track. You can see he was still a little bit weak, but we got his nephew in, who we are training now to be a tracker and a skinner, and he's got a hell of a lot of talent. Oveza, so we've got him in, and Zwei is getting back on track. So again, with him getting fit and the muscles muscling up again, I started hearing the click noise, and I was like, he shrunk again. So I called up Etienne. He said, no, cool. When am I coming to PE? So I said, no, I'm coming to PE on this date. We are going to bring him in. Let's do an assessment and let's check what our next steps forwards are. So this was the week before our client Donnie arrived. So we went to the first time we've ever gone to go see Etienne's new clinic that they're setting up. It was great. We got to sit there and really spend a lot of time, and I got to learn a lot about how Etienne was setting up a leg, what small adjustments like millimeters would change the way how Zwei walked. So we got to spend a lot of time with him on a flat surface. Remember, Zwei gets a leg and walks on the roughest of terrain possible. This is the first time that Etienne could see Zwei walking on a flat surface, straight backwards and forwards. In this whole process, guys, from his first test socket to the socket that we've got Zwei in now, he has not once gone to therapy or physio or an occupational therapist. We have taken the instruction of Etienne, and I've been quite strict on him, making sure that he doesn't learn any bad habits. And Zwei has taught himself to walk, which has been unbelievable to see how motivated he is to getting his life back. And with the whole assessment that day, Etienne stood there and he said he can't believe, and he shows people videos of Zwei, and they can't believe the short time frame and how he is doing in that very short time frame of having a leg. And he checked him all out, and he realized we're not going to get away with this socket, Wade. I'm going to make another socket. So he stood there. He had a marker, marked all the adjustments and where they need to trim the sockets down. The diameter, the bottom was fine. Halfway up, they wanted to tighten it up to get that perfect fit. Because anything to do with prosthetics, guys, is the fit, comfort, and you don't want to get hurt. You don't want to create any pressure sores while you're wearing your prosthetic. Otherwise, you won't want to wear your prosthetic. And with Zwei being active, this needs to be perfect. So Etienne had it. We left the leg there, and he would have it for a week. And we were supposed to go pick up Donnie and pick up Zwei's socket. So it would be really cool because Donnie has been following the story. Donnie found us via YouTube, and he knows Zwei's journey. So he was super excited to go meet the doctor who has helped us along this journey. But unfortunately, it didn't pan out that way because they had not finished the casting process. So I said to Etienne, don't stress about it. Not an issue. Zwei is quite capable on his crutches. As much as we want him on his leg, he's capable on his crutches, and we hit it off and we went and hunted. So it had no pressure or stress or worry. When we finished up the hunt, unfortunately, Zwei got a phone call to say his father had passed away. So I took Zwei home, dropped him off to be with his family to help with all the funeral arrangements and everything like that. Today was the day that they actually buried his dad today. So now on Monday, Monday or Tuesday, Monday, Etienne kindly drove all the way from Port Elizabeth to Grahamstown to come and fit Zwei with his leg because I told him that yes, we couldn't because we were planning on going to see Etienne, but unfortunately Zwei's dad passed away. So that was the reason why we never went to Port Elizabeth. And Etienne kindly drove all the way to Grahamstown just to come and fit Zwei with his leg, that he'd have his leg for his father's funeral. So that shows you the type of person Etienne is. The amount of above and beyond he has gone and done for Zwei, and this whole process has been amazing. And I can't thank him enough and his practice enough for doing this for Zwei. It's that every question gets answered. If we need any assistance, it's a phone call, it's a WhatsApp message. Etienne has been unbelievable in Zwei's journey. And I don't think any of us could thank him enough. But he came all the way out and he had hit that socket out the park. Absolute glove fit. Everything just seemed to be in the right place. We fitted him at my mother in law's place. She got a lovely long passage that Zwei could walk up and down while Etienne did the adjustments. Obviously, guys, this is a type of thing where the more Zwei walks and gets used to his leg, the more tweaking is going to happen. So this should be Zwei's final socket, but it's not the end of his journey, if that makes sense, because there's still a lot more of fine tuning, tweaking, ups and downs that we may go through in this whole process of getting Zwei super active on his leg. And our journey with Etienne hasn't come to an end. He's a hell of a guy. And we thoroughly enjoy our visits with him every time we see him. And it's just awesome to know that we have a doctor in our corner as awesome as he is. Like I say, I can't thank him enough. And Zwei got to have his leg at his dad's funeral, and I hope him and his family are all at peace and are happy and celebrated his dad's life to the fullest. His dad used to work for my dad back in the day when we were growing up as kids, and he was a hell of a worker. And when he retired, he also moved into town. So it's just a family that we are very, very fond of. And as as our business grows and the team we hunt with, like, yes, Why went his own way and I went my way and we hunted, but we came back together again. And this whole journey that I've gone on with him is for the benefit of him. It's not any benefit for me or anything like that. I want to see the man succeed because he is just one hell of a tracker, one hell of a skinner. Right now, he's been sidelined as a skinner on the most part of things, but where he can track on his crutches, he tracks on his crutches. But now we've got his nephew who's part of the fold. His brother works for my brother. And this is just, it's like I say, they family. They're not staff, they family. And I think if everyone gets to meet Zwei and come out and experience the type of person he is, you'll realize throughout these stories that we are close knit. This is one. I don't know. When I think of it, it makes me a little bit teary and shaky because it's a massive journey that he's had to go through, and I'm very grateful to be part of it. And I can't thank anyone enough who have been part of this journey. You guys all know who you are. All of those guys who donated, all of the guys who um, anonymously donated to Steve and the donation of the knee. Buddy, we're looking forward to hunting with you and looking forward to hunting with whoever wins your guys' raffle. There's a raffle that's out there, guys, to come and experience this with us. Come and hunt with us. So make sure if you guys haven't booked with us, go find Steve's raffle for X22 and be sure that you're part of it to win your opportunity to come and hunt with us. And yes, again, guys, for all the strangers out there who are willing to support Zwaai, this has just been one hell of a journey. Please follow along for more. Guys, donation wise, we are still short. So I'm going to ask again, please make sure you hit the BackaBuddy link in the bio of my Instagram page or in the description of this YouTube video and in the description of the podcast. Make sure you go there. Every little bit counts, guys. We are still needing to make sure that we get a left foot for Zwaai and make sure that it can be fitted correctly. All of this stuff costs. Nothing's for free. And we are just grateful for those who are supporting us as we go along. So, guys, if you're enjoying this journey, please, man, do us a favor. Hit the like and subscribe button and come on the next journey with us. And stay tuned for what's to come with Zwai's story. So, till later, guys. Cheers.
We all got dreams, we all want things. But what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be?